Hey, I'm James Teagle. I'm a pro triathlete. I'm also a triathlon coach, and I'm an ambassador for Neuff Red. Okay, Neuff Red have asked me to do a video on heat acclimatization after I won in Gdansk, which was a very hot race. So yeah, here we go. So how to get ready for the heat? So first of all, you got to acknowledge the effects of heat on exercise. So generally, competing in a hot environment or hotter than you're used to with high humidity will mean that your muscle temperatures are higher, which would mean that actually they start to use anaerobic glycolysis a bit more than aerobic glycolysis. So effectively your thresholds come down slightly. This makes it hard for you to maintain the same power that you would in a normal temperature, and it also increases lactic acid production. So that's one of the other key areas where you need to be aware of. The other areas are it does tend to decrease plasma volume through dehydration. So if you're sweating a lot, you're losing lots of fluid. Your body will basically reduce plasma volume. That's the plasma is the thing in your blood, like the water in your blood, and that will lead to lower blood pressure. Even as heart rate increases, so your heart rate will increase to try and compensate for that. And basically, that's called heart rate drift. So you've probably seen it competing in a hot environment or doing a training session in a hot environment where your heart rate goes up and your power basically stays the same or even goes down, even though you're not at threshold. And all of that basically impacts your oxygen delivery, which can lead to decreased muscular endurance and reduced ability to compete for long times in the heat, or reduced power output as well. Okay. The other effect of competing in the heat is it's just damn unpleasant. It'll increase your rate of perceived exertion, and it'll decrease your pain tolerance. So you'll not be wanting to push as hard, and you won't be wanting to push for as long, basically. Now there are some methods that you can use to make it a bit easier. Generally, being fitter does help. So just being aerobically fit helps because you'll have things like increased plasma volume and higher density of energy availability in your muscles. But there are things that in general everyone can do to prepare for heat. Now these things generally, heat adaptation protocols, you need to know it's a hot day. So I'll come on to what you can do on race day later, if it's just a hot day. But if you're expected to race somewhere hot, then you can do some heat adaptation work to prepare yourself for that. So heat adaptation work. So basically, that is getting in the heat and preparing yourself for race day. So there's a couple of examples. First example, the DIY approach. Set up a turbo at home, put the heating on, maybe in the bathroom, or if you've got a bit of extra space, if you're lucky enough to have a laundry room, that kind of thing, just to basically simulate the environment on race day. You want to get the temperature high. You want your body temperature to be around 39 degrees to elicit any adaptation. You can sometimes monitor yourself with core devices if you're lucky enough to have one. Generally, it takes about 10 sessions, 10 1 hour sessions to complete a full protocol of that. And you're looking to start nice and easy and build up the intensity as you go along. It's really important with sessions like that and protocols like that you don't disregard the heat stress. So you might think the sessions are really easy. So for example, you might start off with some easy 1 hour spins in the heat, but actually your body will respond to that, and there's quite a lot of heat stress. So don't treat them as easy days. Okay. Generally, you want to do that about 3 weeks out from the event. So 10 days, 3 weeks out from the event, giving you enough time to recover from the heat adaptation protocol, so that you're at your prime on race day and you've also got something left in the tank. Okay, so that's the DIY approach. The other approach you use is sauna or a bath. So basically, after your session, do a fairly hard session. Your body temperature will be elevated, so your core body temperature will be elevated, and you want to sit in a sauna or a hot bath for 15 to 30 minutes, up to 3 or 4 times a week, and that'll just elicit some response to the heat. So it might not be as effective as the other methods, but it will have some effect. So that's something you can do if you've got access to a sauna or a hot bath, or maybe you haven't got access to the other methods of training. Another area that you could use is heat chambers. So not many people have got access to heat chambers or the money to get in a heat chamber, but generally what you're looking to do there is pretty similar to the DIY protocol, but you can really just control your heat. You can really just control the heat and your body temperature. So again, you're looking for about 10 sessions of that. You'll have the benefit of probably having professionals to look after your heart rate and power and regulate the heat for you, and 10 sessions of that, and that is the gold standard really, because you can control everything. So that's what a lot of professionals will do in funded programs, for example, or professionals that have enough money to do that kind of thing. Obviously, the fourth way of doing things is just to go out to the event early. So if you're racing somewhere hot, doing a bit of training in the environment in which you're racing. Now, if you're lucky enough to go out really early, you can do a full heat prep protocol, maybe like 10 days of training the heat. Again, you want to build your way up to that, so maybe just starting off with sessions in the morning and then building through to, by the end of that block, doing sessions in the afternoon, in the heat of a day with a bit of intensity. 10 sessions of an hour should be enough, but then you're just living in that environment as well. If you don't have enough time, just be careful. You can do it just before the event, but you just have to be really careful not to do too much. Because if that's your only option, it will have some benefit, but you just don't want to be tired before the race. And like I said already, heat adaptation does increase the stress in your body, even if it's really easy. Okay, so the benefits of heat adaptation, are pretty much reverse of the negatives of racing in the heat. So increased plasma volume, which will lead to an increase in VO2 max, increased muscle force production, increase in your ability to power muscles with aerobic glycolysis, and just a general feeling of better perceived exertion in the heat. So yeah, there's quite a few benefits, and actually it's a good way of getting fit. Generally, heat adaptation will last for about, it will start to decrease about a week after exercise, and then after each week, it's about a 75% decrease. So it depends on the individual as to how long it lasts, but there will be a decrease in your adaptation as time goes on. Okay, so it's best to do near the event. Okay, so let's say you don't have the ability to do any heat work, or maybe you have done heat work and you're still, it's still going to be a hot day. There are some things you can do on race day to make sure that actually you don't suffer as much as you could. The first thing is to just acknowledge the fact that your power is going to be lower, especially if you haven't done any heat work. Your power is going to be lower. There's nothing you can do about that. Your threshold is effectively not as high, and you need to be careful. You need to be really careful when you're on the bike, not to put too much power out, and you also need to be really careful not to do too much sprinting out corners, that kind of thing. So all of that is wasted energy that will, effectively increase your core temperature and make you feel rubbish, increase sweat rate, that kind of thing. That you can't really deal with if you haven't done the work. You need to carry a bit more energy on the bike, so maybe another gel, that kind of thing, just to compensate for the fact that your body will be using more muscle glycogen. So that's something you need to think about. Before race day itself, you want to be staying out of the sun, you want to be using sunblock, you want to be wearing appropriate clothing, you want to be standing in the shade, not standing around in transition, talking to your mates, not putting your wetsuit on too early. It's amazing how many people do that, but put your wetsuit on 30 hours is a long time, 30 minutes before the race, and that's 30 minutes of you just sat in a sweat box really. So I know it's tempting to put it on early, but putting it off for as long as possible. You can do things like sodium loading the day before. Now the evidence is, it's in favour slightly, I'd say. There's some evidence to the contrary of that. It's something I do. So maybe having a look at how you can sodium load before an event. So there's plenty of companies that will do that for you, and will do like a calculator and sell their corrective products. So you can go and check out some of them on the internet if that's something you want to try out. I think having electrolytes on the bike is really key, especially if you're not used to racing in the heat, just because you don't want to get cramps. You will use more salt just because of the increase in dehydration, and therefore water loss and fluid loss. So you do want to make sure you got the electrolytes on the bike, and you just want to make sure generally that actually you're in control. The other thing to think about is when you're on the run, make sure you're using the aid stations. Get through the water on the bike, get through everything you can on the bike really if it's really hot, and you've got some electrolytes in there. Don't be leaving that to chance. And also on the run, have the water available, at the aid stations. Use it, have a swig, and then chuck it on the back of your head, because actually that's where a lot of the receptors are, and that will help cool you down. Okay. Well, I think that's all. If anyone's got any questions, then feel free to contact me or Neuff Red. I hope that helps. All the best.